I would like to reconvene the meeting and call this meeting to order for the City Council meeting of March 5th, 2019. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Here.
Councilmember Moats?
Here.
Councilmember Soto?
Here.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Here.
And Madam Mayor Patino?
Here. Interim City Attorney, Mr. Cinco, could you please give the closed session report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. There was no reportable action.
Thank you. Our first order of business is a proclamation, and Councilmember Soto will be making the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a great honor to be able to present this proclamation in recognition of International Women's Day here in Santa Maria, especially given, if you all haven't noticed, we have a majority female council. Yeah. So to me, it's mind-boggling to think that over 100 years ago, the first International Women's Day was celebrated. And yet, we are still having to fight for gender-based equity in this world. As we celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women from all around the globe, let us not forget that there is still much work to be done. While much progress has been made in the women's progressive movement, we must end the limits we face around education, healthcare, employment, and violence against women. With that said, I am happy to present this proclamation. So, whereas in 1911, International Women's Day was first honored in Austria, Denmark, Germany, and Switzerland, and whereas in 1977, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution calling on member states to proclaim a day for women's rights, international peace, and each year issues a proclamation calling on all citizens to observe March as National Women's History Month. And whereas International Women's Day is observed around the world and provides an opportunity to recognize and reflect on the progress made to advance women's equality, to celebrate the gains made by women in society, and to reflect on the challenges and barriers which women continue to face today. And whereas women access to education, healthcare, and paid labor has improved, and legislation that promises equal opportunities for women and respects for their human rights has been adopted in many countries. Now, therefore, we, the City of Santa Maria, hereby recognize Friday, March 8, 2019 as International Women's Day in the City of Santa Maria. And we encourage all residents and businesses to celebrate by uplifting women, standing up for women, and believing women. So, here to accept the proclamation is Erica Weber, Marisol Cruz of the Santa Maria Women's Network.
This is really great. Thank you. This is such an honor to accept this on behalf of the Women's Network. We're a network of women from the Santa Maria Valley and beyond who come together to share and support one another personally and professionally and to serve the community. And our goal is to empower and encourage women to expand their network of support, to increase their expertise in their business strategies, and to grow their businesses, large or small. And throughout the year, we give scholarships to women to help them meet their personal development and business goals. And once a year, by no coincidence, on March 7th, we have an event called Women of Excellence, where we will honor women that have made a significant impact in our community. Tickets are still available in case anyone would like to attend. Thursday night at the Country Club. This year, we're going to honor two local women, Catherine Sullivan of Dignity Health and April Sargent, Santa Maria Neuroboxing, and Your Garage Door Lady, American Garage Door. And these two women have made outstanding strides in their respective fields in this community, and we're really pleased that they should receive this honor. So if you'd like to join us, please do so. You can even contact Marisol. Most of you know her. You can reach her at Community Bank of Santa Maria. And thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Next, we have another proclamation, and Councilmember Waterfield will be making the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, I should say. This proclamation is going to be in regards to Arbor Week. Whereas Arbor Week is celebrated nationally to encourage Americans to maintain and replenish the country's vast forests, orchards, urban areas, and woodlands, and whereas the residents of Santa Maria recognize that trees are a vital resource in beautifying the community's environment by relieving our carbon footprints and serving as valuable economic assets in the city, maintaining or increasing property values, and attracting businesses and new residents to Santa Maria. And whereas by educating children in the community of the importance of trees, the City of Santa Maria Recreation and Parks Department is working to ensure Arbor Week remains an important week to future generations and is coordinating educational activities with the local school districts to educate children on the many benefits tree provide, as well as the history of Arbor Week. And whereas through an Arbor Day proclamation, President Theodore Roosevelt announced a people without children would face hopeless future. A country without trees is almost as hopeless. The President's message still rings true today. And whereas the City of Santa Maria acknowledges the state of California's proclamation encouraging a week-long celebration of trees. Now therefore, Alice M. Patino, Mayor of the City of Santa Maria, hereby recognized the week of March 7th through the 14th, 2019 as Arbor Week in the City of Santa Maria and invite all residents and businesses to celebrate and take part in festivities by planting trees and acknowledging the important role trees have in the city. And here to accept the proclamation is Roy Teniente. Is he here? Oh, perfect.
Yeah, there's
Thank
Roy.
you.
On behalf of the Recreation and Parks Department and all tree huggers everywhere, I accept this proclamation. This really shows the value and importance that the city places on trees. The city, I don't know if anybody knows, but the city has approximately over 35,000 trees that we maintain here in the city of Santa Maria. So this is a good example of how the city feels about trees and the benefits and the services they provide. This will kick off our Arbor Day celebration this year, like it does every year, and we have a couple schools that we'll go out to and we'll educate the kids on the importance of the trees and the benefits they provide, as well as a tree planting and dedicated to them. So what we do out there is really show the young ones that these trees are valued to us, and that when they grow up, and a lot of them can remember this tree planting, and they can show their kids that they were there the day that we planted a tree. So it's again, it's a good thing that we do for them. So again, thank you very much, and I accept this proclamation.
Thank you. Mr. Teniente, how many trees do we actually plant every year? I know the amount is enormous, but...
We approximately plant about 300 trees every year.
Okay.
These last 2 years and the year coming up, we actually have a grant to plant 500 trees. So we are going to go. We have already started planting, and we're going to plant again about 500 trees by the end of next year, or by the middle of next year. We'll have 500 trees, new trees through the grant.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is the man that knows everything about trees. Whenever I have a question or anybody calls me about our trees, I've even been called by people saying we don't have enough trees in the city of Santa Maria. And I knew we had in the thousands, but I wasn't sure. So that'll be good for the radio show, because I couldn't say that this morning. I couldn't remember how many trees we had. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda will be the public comment period. Madam Clerk, could you please read the criteria for the public comment portion of the agenda?
This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on consent agenda items, closed session items, or matters not otherwise scheduled on the printed agenda this evening. Unless otherwise directed by the mayor, speakers will have 3 minutes to comment. Direction to staff may be given. However, state law does not allow action to be taken by the city council on matters not on the printed agenda. Once the public comment period commences, no other speakers will be allowed to submit a request to speak form. And Madam Mayor, we have 10 requests to speak.
And please keep your comments to 3 minutes, so I don't have to tell you that your time is up. Okay. We have Ernest Armenta, followed by Denise Gonzalez, followed by Inga Stolch. Okay.
Member and public, Ernest Armenta, City Center, regarding 3H on the consent calendar, this is the agreement between J&A Santa Maria LLC. For those who are listening, our landfill produces methane gas, and what that methane gas does, we have a middleman. So what that middleman does is, I guess it operates and regulates the methane gas, but what it also does, the excess gas is sold not through the city, but through this company to Dignity Healthcare, the hospital. Now, the hospital has a cost savings of over $900,000 per year that it's saving by purchasing this gas, not from the middleman, J&A. But the agreement that J&A has with the city is, what J&A pays the city is only $6,000 a month. Now, in the agenda item, we don't actually know what the actual contract is. What's their profit? What are they gaining? Remember, this is the city's methane gas. So my position is very simple. I'm not opposed to the company receiving the contract. I'm opposed to the amount. The current situation that we're in, Ms. Patino, is that you have come to us, the taxpayers, and you asked us, Jack Owens, Trent Vendetti, and Russell Mango, Mike Cordero, Michael Motes, Alice Patino, Etta Waterfield, and Mrs. Soto. They all came to us, the voters, and asked us, hey, our city police department and our city fire department are in a financial crisis. That's what they said. They said they turned over every mattress, looked under every cupboard and every can, and could not find the funding for the police and fire department, so they came to us. And they told us, the taxpayers, hey, pay more to close your children, pay more for home repairs and auto repairs. That's what the city council and these individuals came and told us. But if you go to Mrs. Harvey's financial report, you'll see that the police department and the fire department are not in a financial crisis. You'll see what the problem is the policy formation from the city council. That's the issue here. You refuse to resolve the multi-tier system regarding city employees. It's a drain. Either you fix the problem or you be upfront and tell us what the problem is. I believe that it's time for us just to have some new council members. I've always, Mrs. Patino doesn't need any defense, but I remember at one time, we did come to her defense when she was running for city council. When the Police Officers Association and many organizations, even people here, were attacking Ms. Patino, I was one that came and said, you know what, I'm going to re-elect her. But Madam Chair, I take no pleasure in this. But I think you had a good run. You did everything you could to get us out of this financial bind. My yellow light's blinking, but I think that changes are needed here. If it was my decision, Ms. Patino, every one of you would be recalled and removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Denise Gonzalez, followed by Inga Stolch, followed by Jackie Brunello.
Good evening. My name is Denise, and I work for the County Mental Health Behavioral Wellness Department out on Foster Road, and I'm here representing the staff and advocating for our clients out at the County Mental Health Clinic. My concern for today is our bus stop that's located out on Foster Road that supports both children's county mental health, adult side county mental health, not mentioning the other two county services that are there, which are the food bank and the animal shelter. My concern with advocating for our clients is the safety hazardous, issue that's there at the bus stop. It's very unsafe for most of our population to be able to stand there for a long period of time. I understand that the bus route goes, about every hour or so, but it is causing a hardship for transportation with our population, including med appointments, getting medications addressed. Last month, between 30 to 20% of our clients no-showed for doctor's appointments, which links them with the proper medication to keep them mentally stable. Also, there was up to 50% of clients that were late on their injections, per the med staff report at the count. And this is on the adult side. I don't know the statistics for the children's side, but I am advocating for the adults. Some of our clients are not only psychologically disabled, they're physically disabled, so they're unable to cross the street. They've reported they feel uncomfortable because they're not, they're in walkers and things like that. So we're asking for support from the city to just create a safer environment at that bus stop. Right now, there's a bench on one side. There's two bus stops located out on Foster Road. So there's a bench on one side, but the pavement is not safe. It's muddy, so people can slip when it's, especially right now when it's pouring. It's a safety issue. So that was my, my presentation for today, and to just also, advocate for those that can't come here and speak for themselves, which are our clients. There were a few interested in coming to speak out, those of them that felt a little bit more confident, but we didn't give them enough time to do so. But we are in search for creating a safer environment for our population to get services, since it deters from them, getting to their medications, and then they end up at the ER, or they end up, with police contacts. So in order to help reduce that, we figured that, we'd support them with getting to the clinic to begin with, and, get their services and treatment that they need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Inga Stolch, followed by Jackie Brunello.
I'm Inge Stolch. I live at 405 Marion Drive, which is exactly 3 minutes from the project I'm talking about. The project is converting the Comfort Inn to a H2A housing project. I'm concerned because, of course, mainly because there's so little known about the situation. Great care was taken to maintain the appearance of keeping the name as motel instead of converting it to an H2H housing project in order to avoid having to send out notices to nearby residents. The location is just wrong for that many young people and that much testosterone in one place without families and girlfriends. I would like to know what measures are being taken to address prostitution, fights, noise, litter, drugs, etc. I'm actually sympathetic because if I had a business and desperately needed workers, I would try everything to get them. However, the farm would have been a much more logical place for it. As I understand, that was tried, but it was shut down by Fish and Game or by environmentalists, so I don't know exactly. I guess in the meantime, we just have to adopt a wait-and-see attitude, hoping it's not too late by the time some of our fears are a reality. By the way, what happened to the occupancy tax that was so sorely needed and the maximum stay of allowable 30 days? Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jackie Brunello, followed by Francesca Shepard, followed by Charles Huffings. Good evening, Ms. Brunello.
Madam Mayor, Patino, and City Council members. I'm Jackie Brunello. I'm a resident of Hancock Park. I'm here today to express some concerns that I have with the H2A, which I understand is state and federal mandated. I have no problem with 130-plus men and women being bused to Santa Maria from Mexico to work on the farm fields. I think they should be applauded for wanting to better their lives and to make money to realize the American dream. I understand the individuals will be housed in the renovated Comfort Inn Motel. Having not heard about this until a few days ago, one would wonder why information had not been simulated. I have a concern as to where the individuals will have their meals. I've heard IHOP and Burger King, both in the vicinity, and possibly a cook for those who wish to eat elsewhere. A risk factor that I'm concerned with in safety is a concern to me because located within a 2 to 3 mile radius, you have 2 elementary schools, you have 2 high schools, you have a college, you have the hospital, and you also have seniors. So that is a concern. I understand they work all day, but if you ever go by the schools, you'll see how many students are walking home. I would hope information regarding the H-2A will be forthcoming. Thank you for allowing me to express my opinion and concerns.
Thank you. Francesca Shepherd, followed by Charles Huffings, followed by Esther Jensen.
Honorable Mayor and Council people, I'm back here again for something else, and this is with the H-2A. I was not aware of it till last week. I at one time owned this motel. When I purchased it, I came to the city and asked if it could be rezoned to be made into an office building and parking that we so badly needed around the hospital. I was turned down because there was no way that the city could give up the bed tax, and I paid it for years till I had some other problem and wanted to get rid of it. Now, I did not know that it sold in September, and I went and looked at all the rules and regulation, hadn't changed from the time I ran this motel, and I don't know how that could be done that the people could move in without it becoming a boarding house, and it has you're fined if you make a mistake and have somebody stay there more than 30 days. And I don't know how this is coming about, because I was told by one of the owners that they are moving in on the 1st of April. And I would like to have some explanation for all of us that live in Hancock and around that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Huffings, followed by Esther Jensen, followed by Jennifer McMurray.
To Honorable Mayor Patino and members of the City Council. My name is Charles Huffines. I'm Client Commissioner for the Santa Barbara County Behavioral Wellness Commission, and I'm representing Santa Maria. I'm here to ask for another bench be placed on Foster Road at the mental health clinic. Shelter for the people waiting for the buses in number 5 and number 6. Better lighting in the street where the buses come through. And make sure the bus schedules we have run on time. A lot of times they're late. Especially when it is pouring rain outside on Foster Road, and at dark, with the lack of lighting we have there, it could cause a lot of problems, like rape, abductions, part of the RISE project. This issue is a cost to these people. The issue that is more costly is what we were told is that the survey shows that not enough people go by there that use the service. more clients come out of the clinic over there that use the transit service, but will not say they use the transit service because they have mental issues, and the issues that they have will prevent them from coming out of their comfort zones and saying that we're driving the bus. To tell the truth, you need to spend the money necessary to fix this issue at the next budget that you prescribe for this year. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Esther Jensen, followed by Jennifer McMurrain, followed by Kathy Ortiz.
Good evening, Mayor Patino and council members. I'm Esther Jensen. I'm a resident of the La Maria Mobile Home Park on South Thornburg. I'm currently treasurer of the North Santa Barbara County Manufactured Homeowners Team. I'd like to give you more information regarding our wishes to have enforceable rent stabilization ordinance here in the city of Santa Maria. La Maria Park has been sold twice during the time that I've lived there. When I first moved in, the rent was a basic rent with an annual raise of 90% of the CPI. After the first sale, our rent went to 100% of CPI, and we were given additional charges for water, trash, and sewer each month. Then in 2014, our park sold again. We then were assessed 100% CPI, charge for water, trash, and sewer, and an additional charge for property taxes. This is forcing undue pressure on many of our senior residents to be able to continue living in their homes. We aren't like rentals. If there's something in the house that goes wrong, we can't call the park owner. We are responsible for our own individual repairs. We're also responsible for paying either a license fee if we have an older coach or property tax on the newer ones. Mobile homeowners need affordable space rent and deserve protection of any excessive rent practices. A balance for affordability for homeowners and a fair return on the owner's investment can be possible with enforceable rent stabilization. Neighbor cities like Goleta, Lompoc, Morro Bay, Pismo Beach, City and County of San Luis, the County of Santa Barbara, along with 84 other cities and counties in the state have adopted a rent stabilization ordinance. We feel the time has come. We at Nesbitt are prepared to work with the city on an enforceable rent stabilization ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer McMurrain, followed by Kathy Ortiz.
Hello and good evening. My name is Jennifer McMurrain, and I am here on behalf of the LEAP project, here to speak on the matter of the condition of the bus stops on Foster Road and the need for additional stops and restoration of the current stops. As a resident of Santa Maria and a recipient of mental health services, I understand the importance of easy access to mental health services. Managing a mental illness is a full-time job that incorporates therapy appointments, psychiatric appointments, and at times case manager appointments. In order to successfully work a mental health wellness plan, clients must be able to access care reliably and with the same ease as one using public transportation to access medical doctor appointments or local hospitals. We do have two bus stops at our hospital here, both of which are covered. It is a growing concern in Santa Maria that mental health clients are subjected to dismal conditions at the limited bus stops for behavioral wellness on Foster Road. Not only are these stops unprotected from the elements, but the limitations of the frequency of the routes and the location of the stops can force clients to walk over a half a mile to the stop for bus 6 in the rain and mud, as there are no sidewalks to wait at an uncovered stop for up to 45 minutes. These conditions can lead clients who are in need of immediate care to seek services at local hospitals where the bus services run on a more frequent basis, driving up the cost to taxpayers paying the bill for Medi-Cal patients, as an average cost of an ER visit exceeds $1,000. Providing frequent, easy access to mental health services encourages mental health clients to seek services through the county office and not emergency rooms at a drastically reduced cost. I would like to request that the city implement the stop for bus 6 along Foster Road, re-implement, excuse me. It is my understanding there is one that is no longer being used. We would like to re-implement that stop for bus 6 along Foster Road so that the clients are not forced to walk in the elements, as well as provide a shelter from the rain for those that must wait extended periods of time for the next bus. In addition, if possible, we would like to request that while this transition happens, that those seeking services for behavioral wellness on Foster Road be allowed to request the service of the Santa Maria Area Transit Americans with Disability Act bus services without having to provide verification of disability. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you. Olga Serto. Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Kathy Ortiz. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kathy Ortiz, and I'm here tonight to talk about the issues with our local SMAT services for people accessing behavioral wellness and mental health services on Foster Road. On February 26th of this year, the City Council received numerous phone calls about the inadequate bus stops located here. I want to take a moment and thank City Council Member Gloria Soto for calling me back so promptly and taking the time to talk to me that morning. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Jason Stillwell and Transit Authority Head Austin Odell because they acted very quickly on this, wanting to make sure that the city does start taking better care of it. But I'm here today to ask that the city update the current bus stop that's located on the north side of Foster Road even more with a cover, a sidewalk, and better lighting. As a former client of behavioral wellness on Foster Road, I know all too well what it feels like to wait in the rain for 45 minutes on a day like today when it's pouring down rain outside. There is no cover, just a bench and a sign. There is no sidewalk to wait on, only the bus and the dirt ground. Not to mention, I drove by the bus stop earlier today, and today it's a big mud puddle, completely inaccessible to those needing it. Like many other clients, I was on Social Security when I went to behavioral wellness, so I had a very limited income. So the access to getting a car, providing the gas insurance and all of those needs were not available to me. I did not have the funds. So I relied solely on the bus service to get me to my appointments. And sometimes I would have to get out there 3 times a week. An average appointment for me would take about 7 hours because of the time. Sometimes I would spend a few hours at the clinic getting done, but the other 4 hours were transportation times that I had going back and forth to the clinic. So this would only allow me to get that one appointment in one day, and it was very hard. You know, when it was cold or pouring down rain outside, a lot of people decided to skip those appointments because they didn't want to go out there. Not to mention the dignity of standing out there for 45 minutes in the rain, waiting for a bus when you're just trying to get help. You get soaking wet, it's out there in the middle of nowhere, you're going to get muddy. You know, at times my dignity was gone back then. And this should not be something that anyone else experiences. The current bus stop system at Foster Road is not conducive for a client to maintain their mental health care. Please, I am asking that a cover be put on the north side of Foster Road bus stop that services behavioral wellness. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Olga Serto? Did I butcher your last name?
You did. It's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you for having and giving us the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of Behavioral Wellness. I am here to also advocate. I would like to echo to what was heard this afternoon from other staff members and organizations on the need for the bus stop out in Foster Road. I do understand that there's limited funding for the bus stop, but I also want to advocate on the importance of having it, as it was mentioned, in order for clients to get the services that is needed, their medication, in order to prevent hospitalization 5150s, which end up costing more. When a client falls behind on their medication, they start to decompensate, which leads them to be 5150'd, which ends up costing taxpayers a lot more money. I think that investing in this bus stop is going to be well worth it. And as you heard from other members here today, waiting in the rain, I've seen clients having to wait in the rain, and it's pouring, and it's really muddy out there. On one side, there isn't a bench. And I myself, when I first started working there, I didn't even know there was a bus stop. I would just wonder why people would be standing under the rain. I thought they were waiting for a ride until a coworker told me, oh no, that's a bus stop. There is no covering. I told him, there's no lighting. And so that is a concern, as a staff, but also as a member in the community. I worry that people have to wait in the rain, getting wet, getting sick. Again, some people don't come to their appointments because of the same reason. They have to walk a long distance. They rather not wait in the rain. I've had clients share that they've waited 45 minutes to up to 2 hours for a bus because the bus didn't go through. And which is really sad to hear. I don't think nobody should be in that position where they're, like it was mentioned, where they're seeking help and having to overcome all these barriers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This concludes the public comment portion of the agenda. Before we move on, any comments, Mr. Stillwell?
Sure, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Patino, members of the council. A few comments. First, starting with the methane gas collection system that Mr. Armenta brought up. We are required to collect the methane gas. It's a byproduct of the landfill. The council authorized a study for us to review how to best and most effectively use that gas as either cogeneration or as another opportunity to use the gas so it doesn't enter the environment. We're underway with that study, and that will come back to the council for its consideration of how to best use that gas effectively. And in the meantime, we're requesting this one-year agreement as an interim agreement to make sure we are still collecting the gas and it doesn't end up illegally discharged into the atmosphere. So at this point, it's the best use. We're studying better uses. As far as the buses, we did receive the complaints. Austin Odell, our transit manager, has made contact with everyone who he has contact information for. We'll pass the information along to him tonight. We'd urge people who have bus questions to contact our transit manager, Austin Odell. Our interest in managing the SMAT bus system is to have people ride the bus. We want to enhance ridership. We want to make it convenient for people to use our transit system. And as was alluded to in the public comment, we'll bring forward a proposal with the budget to improve that bus stop, both for Line 5 and the Line 6. And as far as the H2A at the Comfort Inn, we'll work this week to gather the information, circle back with the people who are here tonight, and have a meeting with the residents in that neighborhood. I think would be helpful to be able to hear their concerns and be able to have better facts to present to them of what is going on at Comfort Inn. And then the La Maria Mobile Home Park, we do continue to facilitate an agreement for rent control between the park owners and the coach owners, and we feel we are making progress on that. And if I could, for a minute, I'd like to introduce our new Public Works Director.
Certainly.
So we have the pleasure tonight, after a recruitment, we have Kevin McCune here as our new Public Works City Engineer. He started yesterday, and Kevin's over there already running the computer. Mr. McCune comes to the city of Santa Maria from the city of Lompoc, where he's been employed for the past 18 years, and he's served as the Director of Public Works for the past 7 years. And he has 10 years of experience as a city engineer, with experience working directly with developers, contractors, and outside agencies. He has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Cal Poly and holds a PE license. And and I mentioned his first day is yesterday, so we are welcoming Kevin here tonight, and we're glad to have him on board.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ms. Waterfield?
Kevin, I want to personally welcome you to the city of Santa Maria, and I'm going to have to leave early from this meeting, but I want to let you know what's on my agenda is that, and Mr. Chung is aware of it as well, is the shooting range at the landfill. I know we've been going through the environmental and CEQA and all those things, but I believe those items were supposed to be done September, October. So if that's something that you can look into quickly and gather an answer as to how soon that will come to fruition, I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that we're going through the process on the transit unmet needs, and you can go online, there's a survey, but I don't know when any meetings will be set up for the public, but we usually have 2 or 3 meetings here in Santa Maria for the public to come and to discuss unmet transit needs. I know in the past, because I usually go to those meetings, that we have changed routes, we have done things because people's lives change too, so, and the needs in the community change. Anyway, thank you. So, moving on to the consent calendar, Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 3?
Routine items are presented for city council approval without discussion as a single agenda item in order to expedite the meeting. Consent calendar is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members.
Does anyone have items they wish to pull for discussion? Or?
Madam Mayor, I
Yes.
have one item, item 3C. I will have to recuse myself from that one.
Okay.
But if there's no other, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent calendar excluding item 3C.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats? Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay, 3C?
I can't make that motion.
I move to approve item 3C.
Do I have a second? Okay, we have 3C and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember
I
Waterfield?
recuse myself.
And Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Next order of business is appointments. Madam Clerk, can you please read the title and begin the staff report?
We did that so fast.
I'm sorry.
The City Council will consider making appointments to the Block Grants Advisory Committee, Investment Oversight Committee, Landmark Committee, Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee, Planning Commission, and Recreation and Parks Commission.
Okay, so we'll start with the Block Grants Advisory Committee. Do we have any requests to speak, or?
We actually do have one.
We do? Okay. Mr. Armenta.
Ernesto Armenta, City of Santa Maria. Considering we need changes here, I would go, my recommendation for the Measure U Oversight, Citizens Oversight Committee, I'm going to recommend Abraham Melendez. I don't know the individual, I never met him, but I went through his application, and I feel any new faces and any new people coming on any boards is a good thing. Next, for the Planning Commission, I don't know how to pronounce the first name, Isau, I hope I got it right, Isau Blanco. I read his I don't know if it's a her or him, I apologize, but I read the application, Ms. Patino, and that's who I'm going to recommend. Again, any new face, any new persons to any new committees or boards is a good thing. Last, for the Parks and Recreation, Carlos Escobedo's application was pretty impressive. Yes, this is the kind of individual that I think would do very good on the Parks and Recreation for the youth out there. And those are for the Parks and Recreation, again, Carlos Escobedo. Sorry for Mr. and Mrs. Blanco. Hey, forgive me. And for Abraham. Those are my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take the Blocks Advisory Committee first. Ms. Soto, do you have a nomination?
Do you want me to do my report?
Pardon?
Would you like me to do my report?
Sure. I'm sorry. I was going to skip over you there, Rhonda.
I'll begin with the Block Grants Advisory Committee, which has 2 unexpired terms to fill ending in July 2021. These vacancies occurred as a result of former council member's request last July to only appoint his nominee for the remainder of his term on the city council, which ended in December of 2018. And Mayor Patino's nominee, Rebecca Patterson, recently resigned. Former council member's nominee was Mr. Robert Doyle. He has continued to serve on the committee until he is replaced. This seat on the Block Grants Advisory Committee now becomes the nomination for a new council member, Soto. Additionally, there's another vacancy on the committee due to another resignation from Rosario Sagisi, who is also Mayor Patino's nomination with the term ending in July 2021. There were not enough applications received to fill all vacancies. Staff received applications from the incumbent, Robert Doyle, and one new application from Patricia Solorio. Following the nominations, the appointments are to be made by Mayor Patino with ratification by the City Council to fill the 2 unexpired terms ending in July 2021. Staff will continue to advertise the remaining vacancy on the committee.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Soto, now, do you have a nomination?
I do, Madam Mayor. I'd like to nominate for the blocks, the CDBG, Patricia Solorio.
Okay, and we can do these together, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, then I'll nominate Robert Doyle to the Block Grants Advisory Committee. And I will take that nomination. And do I have a second on these?
I'll second that.
Okay, Dr. Moats has a second. Any council discussion? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
I'll continue with the Investment Oversight Committee. Next, the City Council will have the opportunity to appoint one City Council member to serve on the Investment Oversight Committee for a term coterminous with the appointed council member's term. Mayor Patino is to make the appointment with ratification by the City Council.
Then I will make a motion to appoint Councilmember Moats to the Investment Oversight Committee. Do I have a second?
Aye. Yes.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any council discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
And Councilmember Moats.
Should I abstain?
So,
Yes.
I'll continue with the Landmark Committee, which currently has 2 vacancies and a term expiring for incumbent Jerry Seamus. The incumbent has reapplied and is also the only application staff received. The appointment is to be made by Madam Mayor Patino with ratification by the City Council to fill the term ending January 2021. Staff will continue advertising for the remaining 2 vacancies.
Okay, I'll make a motion to appoint Jerry Seamus to the Landmark Committee. Do I have a second? It's moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
On to the Measure U Committee. That committee has 2 terms expiring. Staff received applications from both incumbents, John Childers Jr. and John Peters, and 2 new applications were received from Abraham Melendrez and John Russweed. One appointment is to be made by Councilmember Waterfield, and one appointment is to be made by Councilmember Soto for 2 terms, both ending in January 2022 or coterminous with the nominating council member's term. Appointments will then be ratified by the City Council.
Okay, so Councilmember Soto, do you have a nomination?
I do. I'd like to nominate Abraham Melendrez.
Okay, and Councilmember Waterfield?
Yes, I'd like to renominate John Childers Jr.
Okay, I accept these nominations and make a motion to appoint Abraham Melendez and John Childers to the Block Grants Advisory Committee. I mean, to the
This is to the Measure U.
To the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee. Okay,
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
and a second. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
And Councilmember Soto.
Aye.
On to the Planning Commission. There are 2 terms expiring. Applications were received from both incumbents, Maribel Hernandez and Kelly White O'Neill, and 3 new applications were received from, I hope I could say it right without messing it up, Isao Blanco, Michael Cardona, and Hazel Putney. Nominations were made by Councilmember Soto and Councilmember Waterfield. Following the nominations, the appointments are then made by the mayor, Madam Mayor Patino, with ratification by the City Council to fill the terms ending in 2022.
Okay, Councilmember Soto, do you have a nomination?
I do, Madam Mayor. Isao Blanco.
Okay, and Councilmember Waterfield?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to reappoint Maribel Hernandez.
Okay, I accept these nominations and make a motion to appoint Isao Blanco and Maribel Hernandez to the Planning Commission. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto?
Aye.
And Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
And our last committee for appointments is the Recreation and Parks Committee, where there are 2 terms expiring. Applications were received from both incumbents, Greg Burtnett and Ileana Velasco Onda. New applications were received from Kenneth Dahman, Carlos Escobedo, and Paul Lee. Councilmember Soto and Councilmember Waterfield will have the opportunity to nominate 1 commissioner each. Following the nominations, the appointments are to be made by Madam Mayor Patino with ratification by the City Council to fill the terms ending in January 2022.
Okay, Councilmember Soto, do you have a nomination?
I do. I'd like to nominate Polly.
And Councilmember Waterfield, do you have a nomination?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to renominate Elena Velasco Anda.
Okay, so I will accept the nominations and make a motion to appoint Paul Lee and Ileana Velasco Anda to the Recreation and Parks Commission. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats? Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Soto? Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
We'll continue to advertise any
Okay.
vacancies.
Okay, thank you to all the new current members for dedicating your time and service to these boards and commissions, and all the new members. And could you please stand, any of the new members? Abraham, if you've not introduced yourself to Mr. Armenta, then you can do so after. Measure you, yeah.
And Isao Blanco is behind you.
Esau. Okay. The next item is a regular business item. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will receive a presentation from city staff and Vice Chair of the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee on the Measure U Annual Report for the period ending June 30th, 2018, and receive and file the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee 2017-18 Annual Reports.
Okay, the staff report is being made by City Manager Stillwell and Measure U Vice Chair Owen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. The Measure U Oversight Committee met this year to review the prior year's spending for Measure U. They met on January 28th and then again on February 18th of this year, and adopted a report that Vice Chair Jack Owen would like to present to the City Council this evening.
Mr. Owen? Oh. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the
Good evening.
council. The committee met on January 28th, February 18th, and reviewed all the documents provided by the Finance Department. And as described in the letter, all of the Measure U funding that was received and expended was in accordance with council's direction and the intent of the Measure U ballot measure.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Owen? Okay.
I do have a couple other notes I just made I want to
Okay.
throw out there. First of all, I'd like to thank the council for their wisdom in bringing Measure U to the voters back in 2008 and revisiting it last year in order to maintain essential services. I thank the staff for their excellent work accounting for all the Measure U funding and using it wisely and in accordance with council's direction to keep the community's essential services up and running. I especially want to thank the community for their overwhelming support of Measure U and the confidence in our city leaders to use their tax dollars wisely. I said it in both of our meetings, and I'm going to say it once again. It's a rare occasion when taxpayers are asked to raise their taxes and they actually vote, in this case overwhelmingly, to say, yes, I want to raise my taxes. Very humbling as a lifetime resident and former city employee to know that 3/4 of the people that voted said, yes, I want my taxes raised. I want to thank the community for their support and look forward to continuing that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for serving on that Measure U
Thank you.
Oversight Committee. Appreciate it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence or requests to speak?
Madam Mayor, we have one request to speak.
Mr. Armenta.
Ernest Armenta, City of Santa Maria. Yeah, Mr. Owens is right. Back between 2008 and 2010, the fire department came to the City of Santa Maria. And they told us, they didn't tell us, they came to their bosses, the city council, and they told their city council that we're located on Donovan and College. And 90% of our calls are medical over the freeway. But we have, if the freeway were to close that bridge, we'd be in serious trouble. So they asked the city of Santa Maria, is there any way that you can build us and fund a fire department on the east side of the freeway? And the response from the city council was that we do not have the money. That was the response, and there was no way that the city could find it. That's how bad things were. Tim Ness made it very clear that we weren't going broke, we were broke. So they came to the city, and I was a supporter of building a fire department on the east side of the freeway. For Southwest Regions, I live on the east side of the freeway. And I said yes. But then all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, the police department and everybody started jumping on the bandwagon. They all wanted to be funded. I made it very clear then, and I'll make it very clear now, that the city police department wasn't worthy of a single penny during that time. But it went, and I voted against it, and hey, the will of the voters, they passed it. And again, this time, the city council had multiple years to get this pension problem, get this debt problem in order. And no answer, ladies and gentlemen. They came again and asked us. When Mr. Owens says that overwhelming three-quarters of the voters voted, ladies and gentlemen, we got about 40,000 registered voters here in the city of Santa Maria. We're lucky if we can get 15,000 voters to vote during the election. Less than 10,000 people, yeah, you won, hey, I'll give it to you. But less than 10,000 people voted for Measure U. Out of 40,000 registered voters, only 10,000 voted for it. I say it now that this city, that I feel that I was tricked. I do. I think there's issues going here on with this Measure U that should be changed. I'm hoping that Mr. Abraham Melendez, who's sitting there on that oversight committee, can look into it and see what changes we need to fix this pension problem, if that's the causation. I make it very clear to, let me end on this, every city employee, this multi-tier system, Mrs. Patino, it's not working. Every employee should contribute the same. Until that day, we are not going to fix this problem. Every single employee of the city of Santa will contribute the same sooner or later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Okay, I'll bring this item back to the council for discussion. Any discussion? No? Yes. Okay. Thank you. The report has been received and will be filed. The next item is another regular business item. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
The City Council will receive a staff presentation, hear public comment, and provide direction for incorporation into the recommended mid-cycle 2019-20 budget of Measure U expenditures to maintain and enhance municipal services.
And the staff report has been made by City Manager Stillwell.
Thank you, Mayor Patino and members of the City Council. So this evening, we're asking the City Council to receive a staff presentation and proposals on the use of Measure U, and for the council to provide direction. There's nothing etched in stone at tonight's meeting. It'll be direction for us to go back and work on the budget and to bring back a balanced budget for the City Council's consideration in June. That would include the proposals for this evening to begin on July 1 of 2019. Bit of background, so the City Council did adopt a balanced budget for the 2 years 2018 to 2020, and that maintains services. The council placed Measure U on the ballot last November with the expectation of voter passage, and it was successful. And we did have over 74% of the voters passed the Measure U on last November to maintain and enhance services. One challenge the city has, and the city's not unique among hundreds of other cities in California, is that expenditures are growing faster than revenue. And Santa Maria has taken excellent steps to bridge that gap by building the Enos Ranch Shopping Center and having the growth of the city's sales tax, accepting the non-hazardous hydrocarbon soil for the landfill, negotiating cost containment and cost sharing with our employee groups and other efforts to reduce pension costs, and also leveraging grants for vital services, including the new $1 million ladder fire truck we have. But with that, we are recognizing that expenditures are continuing to outpace revenues, and we expect that will be the case for the next 3 to 5 years. The challenge with that is the cumulative impact. So as expenditures increase revenue 1 year, those expenditures then become the base for the following year if we are maintaining services. And with the council's wisdom, there was a direction from the council to maintain those services with the understanding the voters wanted those services maintained, and indeed, Measure U did bear that out. So the council has been working, this current year's budget has worked to close that gap between the revenue expenditures by using one-time sources of funding. We've been drawing down on the leaf reserves, we've been holding vacancies longer, we had service level reductions as part of this year's budget, and we have the economic stabilization reserve as a backdrop in the event that we aren't able to maintain a balanced budget through the year. So we have been maintaining the services even with the growing structural deficit. But going forward with the passage of Measure U, we want to make clear that we are not going to use it to rebuild the reserves. We're not going to use it to pay for the facilities that have been underfunded or other liabilities. We will use it for the intent of the voters as stated in the ballot measure language to maintain and enhance services. The council's direction prior to the election was to use Measure U funding 90% for public safety, 5% for youth, and 5% for quality of life. And so the proposal we have this evening that we're hoping to get general direction from the council on are along those lines for public safety, youth, and quality of life services. So specifically, the proposal tonight is to maintain the services that are currently funded by Measure U. So right now we have the quarter-cent sales tax for Measure U. That will increase to 1% when the state implements it. We anticipate April 2019, and that'll start generating revenue, additional revenue for the city on next fiscal year starting July 1. So we propose maintaining the services that are currently funded by the quarter-cent Measure U. We propose maintaining the public safety, quality of life, and youth services for which there was not otherwise ongoing funding. And then we propose to enhance services by adding new public safety, quality of life, and youth programs. And then in parallel, we suggest and recommend that the council begin setting aside reserve funding for Measure U, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So the current Measure U pays for 10% of the sworn police staffing. It pays for Fire Station 5, ranger and graffiti abatement, extra hours for the library, and code compliance. It generates this year about $5.45 million and funds 32 staff, and we propose continuing that service, that level of service. The current services that are existing but don't have ongoing funding that fall within the categories of public safety, quality of life, and youth include 22 police staff, 10 fire personnel, 22 positions at recreation and parks, 4 positions at the library, and 2 code compliance officers. That totals $6.4 million, or about 60 people. And we propose maintaining those services in accordance with the council's direction in adopting the budget, and to have those services then be able to be maintained with ongoing funding from Measure U. And then we propose certain service enhancements. They include police detectives, a police special enforcement team, the additional traffic enforcement. We heard loud from the voters that police traffic enforcement's important, and additional police patrol staffing. We propose additional police or public safety dispatchers, so they would dispatch both police and fire. Police investigative services would be enhanced, and property and evidence clerk. And we hear concerns about property crime, and we have the need to maintain the evidence and the chain of evidence, and we propose increasing that service as well. On the fire side, we propose a fire response unit in the downtown, so we would have 2 fire response units out of our main station, 1 on Cook Street. Also, we would add a deputy fire chief, fire prevention officers, fire administrative support. And then in the area of youth services, we propose enhancing the youth safety related to the work and the strategic plan of the mayor's task force on youth safety. And that also, in addition, that would include youth transportation and staffing to maintain the fields and for the youth programming. We'd also propose increasing library services on Sunday and library security, as well as park service officers, our rangers, who both deal with quality of life issues and safety issues in the library. And we would propose adding more code compliance staffing to maintain the quality of life. They're really the front line out in the neighborhoods and in our community to make sure that our communities look nice, our community and our neighborhoods look nice. Also, a little different with this Measure U versus the existing Measure U is we're proposing setting aside funding for support staff. We found with the quarter-cent Measure U, we didn't have all the staff necessary for IT support, the fleet support to maintain the police vehicles and the computers and the buildings, the GIS mapping, the payroll, all that support service. And then since the voters approved increasing Measure U to 1%, so 3 times increase, we recognize we're going to need some support staffing built into the budget in order to make sure we can hire these staff, keep the vehicles rolling, keep the buildings maintained, keep the computers running, and supporting all the folks who would be part of the enhanced Measure U services. So in total for the enhancements, we propose $6.2 million set aside. That equates to about 30 staff to do these enhanced services. And then the Measure U reserve, we think is important for a couple reasons. One, Measure U is a sales tax, so that's a volatile revenue. So we'll see that revenue decline in a recession. We could see that revenue decline if there's a closure of one of our big sales tax generators. And so a reserve set aside specifically for, and I should step back, and the second side of that, besides the volatile revenue, is these are top priority services that our residents want. So it's key public safety, youth, and quality of life services, and important services to maintain day in and day out, irregardless of the economy and the revenue there. So we propose setting aside a reserve to stay in Measure U at 20% of total Measure U funding, which would be $3.6 million, growing over time. That in the event we have a recession, or I should say when the recession occurs, that we would have funding available to maintain all these services I just described. The primarily police and fire is 90% of Measure U, but the other services as well. And that would be funding available for the city council during the budget process or in between if needed to be able to pull the reserve money out, maintain Measure U services. And it would just be for Measure U services, it would stay in the Measure U fund, and it wouldn't be designed to regenerate any of the current reserves we have. It would be a new additional reserve. And we propose adding money to that reserve over time until we hit the 20% level. So year one, we're not proposing to divert money off of the overall revenue, but just instead, if there's extra money in year one, to put some aside for the reserve for the rainy day. So, and 90% of Measure U is earmarked for public safety, so I want to give the opportunity to Police Chief Hansen and Police Chief Champion to describe the services and their vision of the future. They did develop memos that were included in the council's material, and so they have a clear vision of how Measure U will help with them being able to provide the public safety services that they're charged with overseeing. And so if I can ask Chief Hansen to come up and describe it.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I believe you've been provided with copies of a comprehensive memo from me and your staff materials. It's listed as Attachment B in your staff report, and that memorandum outlines my proposal for a comprehensive 3-year plan of expansion of the Santa Maria Police Department. In doing so, it anticipates expenditures from both Measure U and general fund resources. For purposes of tonight's discussion, I'll limit my remarks to our immediate plan with respect to proposed first-year personnel gains funded by Measure U. I'll begin with the Detective Bureau. At this time, our detective personnel are engaged almost exclusively in the investigation of crimes against persons such as homicide, robbery, rape, domestic violence, and child abuse. Property crimes such as burglary, forgery, and fraud are primarily investigated at the patrol level. Human trafficking is another looming issue and a serious epidemic that plagues our state. Our response to that threat to date has been sporadic at best, and we've yet to address any real proactive approach to that important problem. I intend to add sworn and professional staff positions to the Detective Bureau. The sworn positions will be used to create a new property crimes unit and to augment the already existing violent crimes and high-tech crimes details. I also intend to utilize 2 sworn positions to augment the special enforcement team with a specific mission of working human trafficking investigations. With respect to traffic, our city averages approximately 2,000 traffic collisions a year, nearly a third of which are hit-and-run accidents. And while there are certainly a number of contributing factors to this condition, one is undoubtedly a lack of dedicated traffic enforcement. The SMPD Traffic Bureau currently consists of just 1 sergeant and 5 motorcycle officers. I intend to add sworn personnel to the Traffic Bureau, and some of these items will be used to fill existing vacancies in the motorcycle officer ranks, and others will be designated as DUI enforcement officers under supervision of the traffic sergeant. Just as an aside, we did something new this last year after that horrific accident that we had July 5th, just after the holidays. We instituted a traffic car, a DUI car, and our officer, she has made last year, just in the partial year, over 125 DUI arrests, and she's on track to do well over 200 this year. So it's effective, and I'm sure it's saving lives out there. With respect to patrol operations are the backbone and the most visible representation of any police force, as you know. The SMPD minimum patrol staffing numbers have not increased since the late 1990s. Vacations, sick call-ins, and absences from officers injured on duty regularly put our staffing at or below minimums on a frequent basis. These shortages can result in service reductions and safety concerns and of course, overtime. I intend to add sworn positions to augment our patrol force with the goal of eventually increasing the minimum staffing for patrol. And finally, dispatch services. Our SMPD Dispatch Center, which as you know is a public safety dispatch center for both police and fire, it's a very busy place. It fields over 60,000 emergency calls for service a year, and it operates at full capacity on a frequent basis. The department's emergency communication system can be likened to a bridge or a dam and a reservoir. It has to be built to exceed more than its normal operational tempo. It's got to be built to handle above average issues. Our dispatchers are working a considerable amount of overtime to meet minimums, and some are beginning to display symptoms of burnout. Therefore, I'm convinced that we're in need of additional resources there. So with the availability of Measure U funding, it's my intent to add 2 dispatcher positions this year. In closing, the Santa Maria Police Department is a very good law enforcement agency, as you know. We possess an organizational culture that honors service and respect for others. We're blessed with tremendous support and a leadership team that's second to none, and I believe that the SMPD is the premier law enforcement agency in this region, and that the qualities I mentioned, respect and service and professionalism, are one of the reasons that Measure U was passed with such overwhelming support in this city. People recognize that. We're very good at what we do, but we cannot be an exceptional agency until we can adequately address several critical issues and tasks that we're currently struggling to address. We're at a crossroads whereby we have the talent and infrastructure to go from good to great given the personnel resources. So I'm asking that you please give serious consideration to the proposals that we've outlined, and as always, I welcome the opportunity to address any questions or concerns you may have. I thank you for your time.
Any questions of Chief Hansen?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Waterfield.
Chief Hansen, I will certainly echo what a fine police department you have in regards to the city of Santa Maria. There's one request that I would like to make, and most of my complaints in regards to traffic are people running red lights.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of residents have trained themselves not to go through signal lights as soon as it turns green because there's so many coming in. If we could add motorcycles to, start to begin certain sections of the city, so we'll get the residents or those that are running the red lights used to, they're giving out tickets for this. I know it's tedious, and I know there's things, but we're just waiting for a horrible accident to happen.
It's much needed, ma'am, and that was the point of the increasing the motor officers and whatnot. Right now, with just 5 of them, and they get called to do enforcement around schools, and there are so many things they're being asked to do. It's tough to, and they do a lot of the accident reports, those 2,000 accident reports that we have. And so it's tough to get them out there just to do heavy enforcement, a red light abatement, things like that. So we are going to do that. That's the idea.
Great.
To beef that up and hit that hard.
Great. I know we're limited on that, but with this new Measure U money coming in, hopefully, you're right, we can beef it up
We're right on the
and take care of
cusp,
that.
ma'am, on so many things. It's a matter of, when you do have limited resources, you have to prioritize, and some of those things that need to be done don't get the attention that they should, and this is the opportunity to really get it.
And I realize it's not just Santa Maria. I've been in San Luis Obispo, and I've sat there and counted cars going through as well. So it's all over California,
it's a
basically.
very real problem here.
Absolutely.
I openly acknowledge that, and it's something that we need to get hard.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Dr. Motz?
So, Chief, we have more red light offenders than other communities our size, or is this a unique
We have,
problem?
as I said, we have over 2,000 accidents a year in the city, and we have a lot of hit-and-run accidents as well. About a third of those fully are hit-and-run accidents. And there's a variety of reasons for that. And I think, though, that there's a problem, sir, that we just don't have the regular enforcement of basic traffic laws, the ticket writing that we should have. Nobody likes getting a traffic ticket, but when But when people feel that that's a very real possibility, they slow down and they stop with those red lights. That's not happening right now as it should be.
Do people actually run red lights purposefully, or do they miscalculate when a yellow's going to turn to red?
I don't know. There's kind of a laissez-faire attitude around here that I've noticed with some red lights, though. So we're gonna just crank down on that. I have to believe that our limited ability to enforce that with the traffic resources is a contributing factor. So we need to step that up.
You mean I didn't share my story with you when I was stopped on North Broadway at Taylor where this car came around to the right? There was a red light. He came around me, went up 2 blocks, went around another guy, and there was a red light there. I think that was intentional, Dr. Motes. I really do. I was amazed. Yes.
Chief, I'd like to appreciate you for the memo and how widespread it is. And I know that you don't do all this work by yourself, and I'd like to appreciate the men and women below you that made their contributions to this memo to attack a very real, a set of real problems in the community that I think the community is yet to experience the benefits of what this is going to mean to all of us as residents and visitors of Santa Maria.
Yes,
so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Again, I always want to thank the people in Santa Maria that voted for the Measure U, and they are going to be recipients of this also, because we are going to do what we say we're going to do with the money, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely, and we owe that to them. You know, they've shown a lot of confidence in us, and we need to bolster our activities in a lot of areas, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief Champion.
Good evening, Mayor Patino and City Council. Tonight I'd briefly like to share with you what Measure U is currently doing for the fire department. And in the immediate future, what this is going to do is save 3 positions within our department. Currently, those positions are funded by reserve funding, and so July 1, those individuals will be able to keep their jobs and continue doing the efforts that they're doing for us. As we look at the future, we also have a shortfall in our fleet, and because of previous inabilities to fund our fleet and our apparatus replacement, we have been able to order 3 new fire apparatus, 3 new fire engines that have been needing to be replaced, and so that is really encouraging as well. So basically what we're doing is in the future identifying capital projects and additional staffing. So as we look at additional projects for the fire department, there are a number of issues that we are considering, and one is our station alerting system, which City Council recently approved the funding to help update our station alerting. These are old systems that have been failing and not working properly. One station hasn't never had a properly working alerting system. So we're very thankful for that direction that you gave. Also, we have a need for a training facility. And so as we look to bring on new firefighters, continue to train firefighters and give them the ability to have adequate location and facilities to train, we're looking at building a public safety complex that maybe can be combined with the police department as well. As far as staffing, you notice that there is an additional request for a response unit out of our main fire station, Station 1. And that addresses the 10,000 calls that we're running right now currently. That's about 30 calls a day. And as you well know, the incidents are continuing to rise. We're seeing a tremendous amount of infill within our footprint here in Santa Maria. So not sure if that's thunder or rain. Yeah. So with the additional strain on services, especially in our department, we're experiencing multiple hits, concurrent calls going on at the same time, which then relies on outlying stations to respond to an emergency. And that equates to travel time, extended travel time, and response times. So by adding an additional response unit, that's a 3-person staffed engine company downtown that will help provide that coverage during those multiple calls. It'll help provide that coverage during training so that staff can be able to continue doing their training and not get interrupted or have a delay in their response. We also are proposing to increase our Fire Prevention Bureau. We only have 2 personnel. We have a fire marshal and 2 inspectors for a population of 100,000. So we have a tremendous need to keep up with the mandated inspections that we're needing to stay on top of, plan checks, plan reviews, and basic fire inspections in our businesses in the community. When I began the department back in 1993, we had an office staff of 2. And today we have an office staff of 2. And yet we've added 2 fire stations. We've doubled our call volume. Our population has increased tremendously and has put a strain in our office staff. So we need some help in that area. And so we're asking for an office assistant to help with all that workload. Also, a deputy fire chief. Currently, underneath my position, I just have 3 battalion chiefs, and these are shift battalion chiefs that run the day-to-day operations of the fire stations, the day-to-day operations of it running incidents, and so to have that staff, that intermediate level, administrative level position below me will afford me to be able to not get sucked into the weeds so much in daily operations. I can be able to facilitate more visionary efforts that are going on in the county and with other fire stations. Let's see, and finally I'd just like to reiterate what's already been said about the tremendous support that the community has given us. It's very humbling and we're very grateful for that, but I just also want to highlight the actions of you as City Council. Your leadership and how you've handled business is a direct relation to the success and the reasons why the voters supported this measure. And not to forget the employees of the community. Because of the service that the police department gives day in and day out, public works, utilities, fire department, all that equates to a level of service to our community. And our community is happy with that. They're very appreciative of that, so much so that they're willing to support it even more. So big hand goes out, kudos go out to our city employees. So that wraps up my presentation, and if you have any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Cordero.
Chief, when you speak of building a training center, can you expand on that? Are you talking about something that has a classroom setting or a tower that they're going to run up and down, or both, or what is it? You're going to supply the book side or the physical side, or both?
Both. And so the hope is that, well, let me back up. We have a growth mitigation plan in place for the fire department, and in that plan there's projects. One of the projects is to build a training tower. And so that is partly paid by developer fees, and then also shared with revenue that the city has to come up with to help pay for that. And that would give our firefighters a place to go and do their training in a tower, and in conjunction with that, our hope would be a classroom that would be associated, that this would be a regional training center that could be taken advantage by agencies around Santa Maria. So we have other agencies that would be able to come in and use our facility and then help pay for the ongoing maintenance of our facility, so there would be a little bit of a revenue there. And so we believe it would be a great benefit and value to our community and to the region.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Soto.
Yes, you mentioned that Station 1 receives 30 calls a day?
That would be
or 30 service, they go out to service 30.
That would be 30 incidents, 30 calls for emergencies throughout the city each day.
Okay. Is that the highest, is that the station that receives the highest number of calls?
Station 1 runs the highest percentage of our calls day in and day out, and so they are very busy. They're very extremely busy, and so they are in the center of the city. They're the core of the city, and so having that backup unit there to help offset those calls that they're on and offset and help those other districts. That is the primary use of that engine.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I can wrap
Yes.
up the staff report by just summarizing that the proposal we bring forward to you for your thumbs up or thumbs down tonight is progress as promised. It focuses on increasing the number of police officers, providing safe space for teens, maintaining our 911 emergency medical response times, maintaining and enhancing our youth services, staffing our fire stations with the appropriate number of firefighters, enhancing library hours, and strengthening code compliance and quality of our neighborhoods. So overall, the proposal is to maintain and enhance the services and that would be 122 positions to perform those. And so if that concludes the staff's report. If you have other questions from the council, we're happy to answer those. And then we'd like to, as the council deliberates, we can walk you through each of those 4 categories.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Stillwell? Yeah, Dr. Motz.
I had a question. We're talking about developing a new reserve fund for Measure U, and we're looking at 20% funding for $3.6 million. But that's just 21% for 1 year, because it's bringing in $18 million a year. Is it the goal to exceed $3.6 million, or is that a cap on it?
So thank you for the question, Councilmember Moats. We have a couple thoughts on it. So generally it's a goal. We would, just as the council set a goal for the 19 or so million for the Economic Stabilization Reserve, we propose having a goal of this amount of the 20% for Measure U. If it exceeds that amount, and we hope it does quickly, but we'll see as the economy goes, we would propose using any additional amount for capital investment, such as the training tower or other needs that we would have that are Measure U related services.
Is the training tower going to be in Santa Maria?
We hope it's close to Santa Maria because it is, like as the Chief Champion mentioned, it's helpful to have our personnel close in case there is some fire or something need to respond. We also don't necessarily want it right in the middle of town because they burn things and there's smoke, but it's so close but not too close, I guess is the answer.
Don't they have such a facility at the Allen Hancock campus?
We do, in Lompoc. Yes.
Lompoc, yeah.
Would this not be a duplication of that?
Distance.
Our preference would have been that Hancock College would have built that training tower here in Santa Maria. That did not happen, and so currently we are lacking a training tower. If we were to send our personnel to Lompoc, that means that we would have to backfill those positions. So if we send an engine company out, we have to backfill 3 positions here, which is expensive. And so because of that cost savings measure, if we had a local facility here that our firefighters could take advantage of, we wouldn't have to fill that backfill and basically affect our overtime budget.
Would that be done in association with the Fire Academy at Allen Hancock?
No, it would be separate, yes. We have used Hancock College, the facility in Lompoc. So there's been an agreement between the city and Hancock to go and use that facility, but there is a fee and associated with that. So in conjunction with that and the backfill, it just starts to become really expensive.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes, Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Stillwell, in the information we're about to receive in the next few minutes, is there anything in this that directs us as a council to review this progress on an annual basis so that we can consider, largely probably due to the input from the staff members, the department heads, on what we might want to adjust with regard to this? Because if we get some results on some of these things that we're aiming to target, we may be able to adjust something so that we can do a better job the next year and address other things. Is there something that is in there, or can it be put in there?
Yep. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Cordero. So there are three things. First is, we propose starting this services, enhancing the services on July 1. So that would be a one-year budget. We would then have the Measure U Oversight Committee review that as they have been doing. So you'd have that insight and presentation and objective view. And then we would roll it into the two-year budget process, and that would give us the opportunity to review, like you just alluded to, what our service levels are, what our needs are, and be able to adjust those. So we have a bit of a ramp up with the oversight of the Measure U, and then going forward would be part of the two-year budget cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stillwell, I have a question, and it's going back to the reserve, the Measure U reserve. Can you clarify for me what do you mean by the 20%? Is that 20% of how much it would cost us to maintain the services that we offer through Measure U?
Thank you for the question. So it would be 20% of the total Measure U revenue for any year. So this year it's of the 18 million. And it's, it's a little bit of a higher reserve than typical because our other reserves we have property tax and other revenues that are more stable. Sales tax is more volatile, and then our expenditures related to it are higher priority. So, but 20% isn't, it's not too big, right? It's still an amount that I think would be sufficient for us to address certain economic downturns, but not so much where we're locking up money and not providing it for the services that the voters asked to be provided.
Thank you. And then another question. I know that public safety is usually funded through the general fund. And so I saw that in the report that it said that Measure U funds are now going to be used to supplement the general fund or subsidize or be that additional funding from Measure U is not going to go into the general fund. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But essentially, right, if the general fund funds public safety, I guess I'm trying to figure out how can I best explain this to our residents if we're saying that we have a deficit in our general fund, but yet we are putting money into a reserve without first getting out of the hole. Just so that I know how to explain it to the residents.
Yep, okay, thank you, Councilmember Soto through the mayor. So there's a few parts of that. So the first one is we won't be using Measure U to supplant the general fund. So if there's general fund going to public safety, it'll continue to go to public safety is the proposal. And there's certain amount of public safety services that are now being funded by the one-time reserve, such as vacancies and leaf. Those, at some point, the council would be unable to maintain those, and so we're proposing to use Measure U to maintain those going forward. So that's the kind of the middle part. We propose enhancing the services with the remaining part of Measure U. So it's it's a three-part, or actually two-part. Keep the current Measure U, keep the services for the general fund, and then enhance from there.
Any other questions? Okay, Dr. Montz?
Has the
Did
LEAP
I
fund
catch you?
been exhausted completely, or did we have revenues that exceeded our expectations and have allowed it to exist?
So it's not exhausted, and revenues, the budget has, as Director Harvey described in a previous meeting, the budget is remaining strong. We haven't drawn as much from LEAF as we anticipated to, but we are still anticipating LEAF to be drawn down to close to zero. Yeah. But we are at this point. So if you recall, the council we budgeted balanced the budget this year with using the LEAF, using vacancies, and then in order to have the budget legally balanced, we had to project going into the Economic Stabilization Reserve for the first time. And so we don't anticipate we'll have to do that at this point because of the actual budget being better than the adopted budget.
I have another question, and this is pertaining to the youth services of the report item that I see here. It says that one of the things that we want to do is enhance services for youth is, not so much to enhance, but to maintain services where we provide a safe space for teens. I got a call or a message, and I think I did share this with you. I got a message about a month ago about a resident saying that they wanted to use one of our community centers during the raining season out at Miami in District 3, and that it was closed. And so I'm wondering if part of these funds, if we can allocate funds so that we make sure that community centers are open for community.
I can defer the second part to Alex Posada. So the first part, the safe place for teens, so really what we're focusing on is with the library as a safe place, we want to make sure it remains so by having security and having staffing in there to be able to offer the youth programs and support them in their after-school homework with the tie-ins that we have with the high school. And then for the Maldonado Center, we make sure that's, again, a facility that's open and available to the teens, and then to expand our outreach coordination program that we have with being able to go out, talk to the teens, and the transportation is part of that as well. So when we're out talking to the teens, they need to be able to get to their after-school program or need help at the library, we'll then be able to not only outreach with them, but transport them to one of these places where they're able to do that. And the Miami Center, I can defer to Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Sowell, Mayor, council members. One of the things that we have are the community centers that have been out there. Miami's a 1979 facility. One of the problems that we have with those facilities is the kind of use that it gets. So hours open to the public, being open like in the afternoons or in the daytimes, they're very staff intensive. Somebody has to be there, somebody has to open the buildings. So it becomes pretty costly to keep them open to the public for the events. When we have programs and services offered there, that's kind of where we would be going for Councilmember Soto's request. One of the plans that would be an enhancement would be to move some programs out of the youth center and actually take them on the road, so to speak, and open up those facilities so that we can get groups of youth from the neighborhood schools and things to go in and use them. A final plan hasn't been developed yet. We're kind of looking at where we can do it and at what expense. I know that we've talked to a couple of nonprofits that have expressed some interest in getting some access to those buildings. If we can work out some kind of arrangement with them where they can open the facility up and they can staff it, that may be another alternative. Some of the goals within the task force was to make more space available. So we're working on that. We're hoping one of the positions in the proposal is to fund a coordinator that would take Ms. Rayburn's place and kind of help getting these things back on track. So the goal is to make those facilities available. It may not necessarily be the city doing it, but we're looking for partners that would go out and open those facilities and make them available for youth in the afternoons.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Posada, for that. But just to re-emphasize, these community centers are meant to be used by our residents, and we as a city should be providing those resources so that these spaces can be available for residents. And so with this Measure U money coming in, I'd really like for us to see if it's not a full-time, maybe see what we can do. I'm open to ideas, and I love that idea of partnering up with community benefit agencies. I think that's wonderful. But I'd really like to see that implemented somewhere with Measure U, especially given that that's what we're saying in the report.
And, we agree with you. We think that the buildings are there for the community. It's getting those staffing out there. And as far as staffing goes, probably 60% of our department is part-time. Mm-hmm. So, we understand how to manage that group of employees too. All right, thank you.
Alex, can I ask you a question too?
Councilmember?
Yeah, the basketball courts at Jimenez Elementary School, are those still locked up, or can kids get out and play basketball now on Saturdays and Sundays?
From what I understand, each of the school administrators on site decides the public access. Most of the schools have after-school programs, so those campuses really aren't available to the public till after 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoons.
It really is a random thing. Sometimes the gates might be open at Jimenez or at any of the other schools. It's been our experience from people that we speak to in the community that they have found it difficult to access the school playgrounds after hours or on the weekends.
Yeah, that's such a shame to see all those beautiful basketball courts locked away when kids want to play basketball.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence or requests to speak?
We have no correspondence, but we have 2 requests to speak.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I had one other question.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the report on maintaining youth services, I think I'm so excited to see this on here, and I am also excited to see that we're going to be using Measure U funds to continue the support, the Mayor's Youth Task Force, and I feel like right now we're just in a great opportunity given that we have the Youth Advisory Board that's being overseen by the mayor and our Recreation and Parks Department, and so I'm really excited about that. And so I know that we have been in conversations to see how we can enhance that, and it'd be great for us to look into possibly turning that into very much of like a youth commission similar to what other cities had and have. And so I'd love for us to also
Well,
possibly
it's
doing
growing and it's continuing to grow, and new ideas. So anything you're welcome to participate. Any new ideas be more than welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have 2 requests to speak, Mr. Owen and Mr. Armenta.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Mayor and Council. I'm speaking not as a Measure U committee member now, but just as a member of the community. Just a side note, the discussion about red lights, I've come to the conclusion that the red lights in Santa Maria and the stop signs in Santa Maria, and in a lot of places, are more of a suggestion or a recommendation than they are an actual, you have to stop. It seems like there's, every intersection you're at, you pull up to the intersection and the light turns green for you to go, and 2, 3, 4 cars go through, and it's really gotten out of hand. I hope that the chief's requests are honored in that. Couple things that are near and dear to me is the fire department, their inspectors. When I was fire marshal 100 years ago or thereabouts, we started out, it was just me. I did plan checks, inspections, and all that stuff. And then I was fortunate enough to have 1 inspector. When I retired in 2007, I had 1 inspector. So, as Chief Champion had mentioned, there are so many mandates put upon the fire inspection programs, and one of the things I want to bring to your attention is a fire that happened in San Francisco a few years ago called the Ghost Ship Fire. Oh, yeah. It was a warehouse building that was converted to kind of a multi-tenant arts type place, and I believe it was 36 people died there. I've been following this case because I teach fire prevention at Hancock College, and in reading a lot of the documents that have been submitted by the attorneys that are for the plaintiffs and the victims' families and stuff, there's a lot of things that did not get inspected that should have been inspected. And it's just something we need to get caught up on. I see communities like Santa Barbara that have 5, 6, 8 inspectors, and we have 2. So I'd encourage you to do that. The other thing is the code enforcement program. You can drive around this community anytime you want, and you can pick up hundreds of violations just driving through neighborhoods. And I would hope that there would be some good support for that program also, to get a couple of more officers on board, because it's just overwhelming. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armenta?
Mr. Stillwell, our attachment A is the draft proposal 2018 sales tax ballot measure spending priorities. Can you just explain to me what I'm looking at right here, attachment A? If you may, Honorable Mayor and Mr. Stillwell.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Stillwell.
So attachment A is the service priorities the council adopted ahead of the, as they directed to have the ballot measure placed on the ballot.
And the 16 million is just a number, or is that for the first, for police and fire services? 16 million was just the amount that, a draft proposal of what we're planning that the departments will receive?
It equates to the 90% target set by the council.
So I make the following recommendations, Honorable Mayor, that we reduce the 60 million to 12, and that's by 4 million, we reduce by 4 million, and 2 will go to youth services and programs, and 2 million will also be shared with the quality of services of life. I think it's pretty clear that for the longest time, and I think all of us Santa Maria natives have been here the longest time, that every other department goes without because the police and fire take the majority of the budget. Public safety priority number 1. Mrs. Soto asked the question. Mr. Posada answered. Funding. Now, I believe that this is where Jack Owens and Abraham come in play. They have to participate and start putting more effort into it, and it's clear that we have some that are support the fire, public safety over youth. They may claim they're not, but that is what I see here. I'm looking at I'm listening to Mr. Stillwell, and ladies and gentlemen, we're in serious trouble. I don't believe that Alice Patino, Ms. Soto, Michael Motes, or Mr. Guerrero ever had a plan written, a draft, if this ballot measure failed. I don't believe they had anything made up, ready at hand, in paper, to produce to the voters of what we're going to cut. I think we were just a hope and a prayer that it was going to pass, ladies and gentlemen. I say this, I have nothing but comments. I take no pleasure in pointing the finger, but these are the policy formation. What happens in the city and how the budgets are ran is these folks right here, ladies and gentlemen. And we continue to vote them in. We continue to keep the same individuals with the same problems, and no changes. We're in a financial crisis, ladies and gentlemen. All you have to do is listen to Ms. Harvey and she'll let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Okay, Mr. Stillwell, do you want to walk us through the points that we're going to be deliberating?
Sure, just to go back to those 4 areas, just to make sure it's in line with what the council would like to see in the budget.
Okay.
So the first of the 4 areas is to maintain the current Measure U services. I assume that's the case, but but as we build the budget, we want to make sure the council's directions maintain what we're now using with Measure U. The second one would be to continue to maintain those services that we've been funding with one-time funds but are related to public safety, quality of life, and youth, and that's 60 staff in police, fire, recreation parks, library, and code compliance. And then the third would be enhancing the services as presented, and again, we'll work to push those into the budget and enhance as much as we can. We think this is, based on the numbers that we're seeing from revenue projections, we think this is the enhancement level we could recommend in the budget. And that's, again, 30 staff, primarily public safety, also enhancing youth and quality of life services. So that's good.
And I didn't want to do the thumbs up.
And then finally, the reserve, we don't propose being to 20% first year, but we would bring forward in the budget a policy for the council's consideration to set that 20% target, and we would hope to use savings in the first year to build that. So we wouldn't be diverting money from the revenues just as there's savings due to delays by being able to get the programs up and running. We would use that funding for the Measure U reserve and keep it in Measure U for future Measure U services.
Would there be restrictions if we ever have restrictions on how we can pull that money?
We don't propose restrictions other than what the council would want. At this point, we would just divert it to, or make it available for the council's use, set aside by the council for the use by the council in the future, yeah, without other restrictions, yep. Okay, and that's it. If the council is in line with that, then we'll take that as direction as we're building the budget, and then you'll be able to see that as the balanced budget and we would hope to maintain or begin the services on July 1, assuming the sales tax measure gets put into place by the state in time, which we think it will be, but it's been iffy with the state for the last year or so.
You know, I'd like to make comment on code compliance. As Mr. Owen said, you can drive all around Santa Maria and you see all these violations, and they're blatant violations. And ever since I got on the council, that's something I've always pushed for, and we have more people in code compliance now than we ever have. But I think what I'd like to see is a plan. We have certain violations like leaving your trash cans out, like cars on jacks or cars on the front yard. A lot of these things that are very, very obvious. And I would like to see a plan put together. I have told people that I also would like to see a volunteer group and people that live in their neighborhoods. They have a vested interest in seeing their neighborhoods looking good and not going down in value. But I think to me it's really, really simple, because right now it's complaint driven and people get very angry because they go, well, look at that guy across the street and you're calling on me. And they don't want to fill out that little complaint slip and turn it into the city attorney's office. I would like to see a sort of a plan of how we can do this. And a lot of it is education, that people don't realize that. And along with that, I think you see some of these parties that pop up, they're not supposed to have porta potties in their front yard. You know, that's a violation right there of the health violation, not just our codes violation. But a plan drawn up so that we can really execute stuff. I know we do the walk and talk. I don't know that we can measure the results, we can quantify the results on that or not. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I'm just not sure, how do you measure that? And I know they go out and they educate people, and that's the whole thing. It's not being punitive, but just to educate people as to how their property is supposed to be. And at one time it asked for maybe code compliance going into some of these apartments and checking for violations, because we have these absentee landlords and we have people living in really, really bad situations, as we well know, because I guess we're still in the middle of that mess. And I think it's terrible that we have we've got children living in situations they shouldn't be living in. And that sounds like we're really taking in a lot, but I think that if people are more aware of their rights also, and that they don't have to be living like that some of these properties can be properly maintained and should be by the owners. I know we've got these absent landlords that are living not even in California, and their properties aren't being taken care of. But anyway, I would like to see a plan for code compliance on how we're going to attack all those issues rather than just complaint driven. And there's a lot of people out there that have said to me, I'd love to volunteer to do some of this stuff, and volunteers to do the paperwork, because I don't want to see code compliance bogged down with all the minutia and all the paperwork that they have to do. And I see Mr. Cinco's probably the blood is draining out of his face right now. But just an overall plan on how we can attack this.
All right, we'll bring that to the council.
Thank you. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, I just want to comment that, as a city government, as a city, right, its job is to provide services to its residents, the best quality services. And given that we had such an outpour of support with Measure U through the voters, I think that I'm really happy to see that we're going to maintain the services, especially for public safety, but that we're also having conversations about enhancing them, but then also how we're going to sustain them with the reserve. And so that's something that I'm really happy about, because it's not just about continuing to add on, but to also make sure that it's sustainable for the long run, so that our residents are not then feeling the burden when we're no longer able to provide those services. And then when it comes to youth, the youth are the future of this community. And so, I'm really happy to see that we're going to be allocating funds from Measure U to support our young people, and to really be targeted, intentional about not just of being proactive and in breaking this, as my friend once mentioned, breaking this pipeline of our youth ending up behind bars. And so really taking the prevention piece, being intentional about prevention for our young people, especially when we live in a county where we have one of the highest youth incarceration rates. And so I'm really happy to see that. And thank you for the great presentation. I love that was cool.
Any comments, questions?
Yes.
Mr. Cordero?
I just want to reiterate that this Measure U money, is my understanding, 90% of that goes to first responders, 911 kind of stuff, or perhaps to prevent 911 from being called. And that 5% goes to the enhancement of public, what did you call it, quality of life services and youth services. That's the layout. Okay. Because there's been a lot of suggestions here, and I see the dollar figures going up, and some of it kind of strikes me that it might go over that 5% in some areas. And the other thing I'd like you to do for all of us in the listening public is could you articulate the scope of responsibilities on Mr. Owen and now, of course, young Abraham, their responsibilities as being part of the oversight for Measure U? I think there might be some people expecting that their scope is bigger than it is. Okay, thank you.
So the Measure U Oversight Committee has two primary roles. One is to review the expenditures to make sure they match the ballot language, the voter adopted ballot language, and then it goes to the second part, which is as set by policy by the City Council. And so we have the legal ballot language that was on the ballot that voters approved. Prior to that, when the council set the item on the ballot, the council set a policy statement that had the 90% public safety, 5% youth, and 5% quality of life. So there's a couple things, those are the two real benchmarks that the Measure U Oversight Committee will look at. So to make sure that the funding is being spent legally as required for the ballot language and as set by the City Council. So it's an oversight committee, not a policy-making committee, I think, to the short answer.
So, thank you. And so I didn't hear you say anything in there about management of other divisions and saying, well, you got to start doing this and you better start doing that. That's all elsewhere. That's here. It's not, it has, so young Abraham here, he can't come up to and say, well, I think you ought to put some of that fire department money in over here and do this. Okay, that's not part of their responsibility. That's not part of their responsibility, correct?
Correct. Okay. They're not advisory to the council, right. They're oversight of the
oversight.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clear that up.
I know SBCAG had the oversight committee with the Measure A, and once the SBCAG committee decided to spend the money elsewhere, they were called on the carpet on that by the Oversight Committee. Hey, you guys aren't supposed to spend it there. So,
And they should have been.
yeah, they should have been. Dr. Moats.
Yeah, I know that we all agreed when we put the new Measure U on the ballot that it was to be 90% for public safety and the two other 5% increments. And I think that was a repetition of what it was in 2012. Was that, I mean, how did those numbers actually come to be? Was it sort of poll tested to see if it were 90% public safety, there would be a greater chance of it passing than if it were 80% public safety?
No, it wasn't that scientific. It was the intent of the council recognizing that public safety is a top priority and hearing from the voters that public safety is top priority. As we did the outreach and the polling, we did confirm that it was generally that breakdown. There was a lot of interest in youth services, a lot of interest in keeping our community nice with higher quality, and the vast majority of people we heard from wanted public safety. And it's good, pleased, I mean, we were, from a budget geek point of view, we were pleased when we put together attachment E, and it actually did balance to 90% public safety, 5% youth, and 5% quality of life. So it was, as we compiled the services to maintain and enhance, it was interesting that it fell really in those categories. So it probably does align with the funding that we have generally, the type of services the city does provide using its general funds.
If there were a movement on the city council to say instead of 5% it should be 7.5% or 10% to youth activities, would we get called on that by some oversight committee? Could we do that?
You could do that. I would suggest, I mean, so they legally have the flexibility to do that. You did set a guideline ahead of the ballot saying, or ahead of the election saying it would be 95 and 5. I would suggest if the council wants to enhance those other areas of service that you use the general funds that aren't, that have more flexibility, more discretion. Even though Measure U legally could be changed, I think it, what it said, be called on the carpet, and there's a higher likelihood to be called on the carpet if Measure U funds were changed in that percentage. But it is the council's ultimate discretion. I mean, you have the rest of the general fund where you have more discretion, I guess is the short answer.
Okay, so we're giving a thumbs up then?
Yes,
To
especially
always?
that
Okay.
we're also increasing library hours.
Green thumbs. Okay. Okay, Mr. Stillwell, thank you. So the next item is a report by the city manager, Mr. Stillwell.
Thank you, Mayor Patino and members of the council. So the next meeting of the city council is March 19th. We have a few items of note, number of items on the agenda. One, as it's a consent item, but it's of note, is we're proposing to award a bid for improvements on the Blosser Road and Main Street intersection, which has been in the plan for a while, so that's coming forward, proposed for construction contract. Also, the water service agreement to OSR Coolers east of town. We have a community presentation scheduled. We need to, it'll either be the Central Coast Literacy Council or CALM. We're working to see which of the groups can best be scheduled there. And then we have the home allocation recommendation as a regular business item. And then just a bit looking forward, on August 2nd, we have the CDBG action plan review to review the 2019-2020 funding for the federal CDBG funds. And then we're proposing April 16th to have the first reading of the H2A housing ordinance. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. So we'll hear oral reports of council members. Mr. Cordero, you want to start?
Sure. On February the 21st, I attended what we refer to as the Planning Committee meeting for CAC here in Santa Maria. And there's some exciting things going on. Patricia, the new young lady that is taking over for us there as the CEO, is really bringing up some pretty good ideas and things to better address the needs that are met by CAC. On the 28th, on the same day, on the 21st, I also attended the United Way meeting. There are some suggestions to change some of the people and what they're doing and responsibilities are for addressing the homeless problem. And I think that some of those changes are being brought about by some input from some legal people, some attorneys and things like that, and also some exciting changes. The 28th was kind of a busy day. We had the Enos Ranch groundbreaking for the new school out at Enos Ranch, and it was pretty well attended. And it was a bit exciting to see. This is probably the last school that I'll get to see that's brought into being by that, and it was interesting to note that we learned that our district shrunk by about 100 people for the students, and that equates into money. So we're building this new school. We're going to take from all of the other schools in the community and populate this school, and hopefully that'll make for better learning conditions and environment for our youth. Then I attended the Santa Maria Wisdom Center out on South Depot. That's a great facility. If you're not familiar with it, I suggest you go out there and take a look at it. I think it was 2255 South Depot. And I'm currently working with a young lady to an older lady actually, to try to make her one of the clients out there, because I think it would fit her just fine. She recently lost her husband, and she's in her high 80s. And then the employees' recognition dinner that was held that night at the Vet Center. And all of them were great programs to attend, and I had to beg off on that last few minutes there at the employees' dinner, but it was a great program, and it was great to see the recognition for many of our employees, and all these fine people and the department heads were there to cheer their individual employees on. And that's all I have, I think.
Thank you. Dr. Moats?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On February 20th, after the last city council meeting, the day after I did the Ben Hayes KUHL program recapping the important events that went on. On February 23rd, I went to the Orchid Arts Project dinner, and on February 28th, I went to the Employee Award dinner.
Thank you. Ms. Soto?
Yes, on February 22nd, I attended the Team Vandenberg Air Force Base annual award ceremony where they recognize their folks who are in service. And so, yeah, that was a great event. Their theme of the evening was superhero. And so everybody got to dress up in their favorite superhero outfit or t-shirt. I missed the memo. It's like, this is my costume. So that was fun. And then on Thursday, February 28th, I also attended the groundbreaking for the new school out on Enos Ranch. And that same evening, I also attended the City Employee Awards dinner. I just want to thank the team at Recreation and Parks who put that together. I was so impressed, and it's beautifully put on, and so just a huge thank you to them, and to Tony and Diana, who your team, Mr. Stillwell, you all went above and beyond, and yeah, that was wonderful. That concludes my report.
Thank you. February 20th, I went to Pioneer Valley High School to visit the Teen Advisory Committee that we have there. On the 21st, went to the SBCAG Board of Directors meeting, and after that was in Santa Maria. After that was the City Selection Committee meeting for LAFCO. LAFCO is very important because that is the group that decides annexations. And so Ms. Waterfield had been the alternate behind Mr. Richardson, and so I nominated her for the position and nominated the mayor of Buellton, Miss Sierra, for alternates. So we have 2 North County people on that, which we're very pleased to have. Later, I attended that evening Block Grants Advisory Committee deliberations at Shepherd Hall. On the 22nd, I did an in-studio interview for the St. Jude event with American General Media Studio. February 26th, met with Caltrans. Caltrans would like to do a roundabout on 166 and Black Road. And so they've met with all the board members from SBCAG to convince them this is the way to go. February 27th, I attended the Marion Foundation Board of Directors meeting. Later that day, met with people from ConocoPhillips and their update. That afternoon, Mariscos Ensenada Seafood Restaurant, and they're a new member with the chamber, and that was their 27th anniversary celebration. And she had all kinds of good food out there for people. On the 28th, I attended the Measure T School groundbreaking ceremony, which on Enos Ranch will house 900 kids. And that afternoon spoke at the Wisdom Center ribbon cutting ceremony. And I had been there when they did the groundbreaking, and we just couldn't decide how many years ago that was. And it wasn't just 1 year ago or 2, maybe closer to 5 years ago with the groundbreaking ceremony. That evening, the city employees dinner, which I agree was just a beautiful event, and especially to honor our employees that we have here in the city of Santa Maria. March 1st, I spoke to Leadership Santa Maria Valley at the Government Day, and then I went to Fairlawn School to read to the students for Read Across America. And that afternoon, Ruth Dorney lives at Merrill Gardens, turned 100 years old. And so I went and toasted with a glass of champagne with her. And then, and the next day, March 2nd, Eleanor Jane Conley, her 100th birthday, and presented her with a certificate. And that was at Marion Extended Care. And on March 3rd, we attended the Corazon del Pueblo at Judge Rogelio's house. And that was really a nice event because it's about getting the culture of Santa Maria and the arts. We have so many artists here in Santa Maria. And this whole group is, they're on their way. They've got a culture center, and it's right in the middle of town. And it's going to be real exciting to see what they're going to do here in Santa Maria. On the 5th of May, did the Ben Hayes radio show. Went to Rotary, went to Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley Coalition Luncheon at the Foursquare Church, and that's it. Any other comments?
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add Corazon del Pueblo's reception. I agree with Mayor Patino. It was beautifully done. And something that I learned at that event was that we don't have there's been a lack of space where people can gather to, again, perform their arts, poetry and also hand painting, but that I learned that we don't have an ordinance on street art. And so I found that very interesting. So.
Well, street art's being worked on.
Mr. Cordero?
Thank you, Mayor. I neglected to mention that when I was at the groundbreaking for the new school, that our past city manager, Rick Hayden's name came up. He had sent Phil Alvarado, who was then the superintendent, a text saying it was a great opportunity for our community to see this school come to fruition. And I was the chair of that Measure T for the school district.
Oh, that's
and-
right.
And
You
it
were.
was a real strong opportunity, once again, to see our community come forward and vote to actually raise their taxes as they did for this, just for our students. So the investment in our students and the future of our community is significant here.
It is. So, that's it. Thank you
That's it.
very much. This meeting is adjourned.